Yo, what is going on, everyone? My name is Nick, or The Notorious Fantasy, and in today's video, we're going to be going in depth into my week number 11 running back top 30 rankings and tiers for the 2022 fantasy football season. But before we could get into things, I would like to ask that if you guys are new to the channel and you do end up enjoying today's video, that you please make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. And while you're down there, whether you are new to the channel or not, please make sure that you do leave a like on today's video. It would help us out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at NotoriousFNTSY. And if you have any questions about week number 11, please ask down below in the comments section. We are going to be talking about the sponsor of today's video, DraftKings Sportsbook, a little bit later. So without further ado, let's get into my week number 11 top 30 running back rankings and tiers. We begin with tier number 1 at the running back position. All 5 of these running backs are must starts in my opinion. At number 1, we have Saquon Barkley of the New York Football Giants going up against the Detroit Lions at home in MetLife. Last week, Barkley was the RB number 3 in half PPR in a smash matchup up against a putrid Houston Texans defense. This week, he gets yet another bad defense. He's currently the running back number 4 on the season, so I expect big things out of Saquon Barkley. At number 2, we have Mr. Clean Austin Eckler of the LA Chargers going up against the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday Night Football. Last week was a big down game for Austin Eckler against the Niners. 6 rushes for 24 yards, 12 targets, 7 receptions, 39 receiving yards, 10 fantasy points in half PPR. RB number 23. On the season, he's currently the RB number 1 in fantasy football, but prior to that down game, he was RB 6, 2, 3, 1, and 2. Last time up against the Chiefs, he was the RB9. So we should be in for a huge bounce back performance out of Austin Eckler. At number 3, we have Derrick Henry of the LA Titans, the Tennessee Titans, going up against the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field tonight. Last game out, Derrick Henry was a bit of a disaster. 31 at running back. RB 31, not very good at all. But again, the Denver defense is the strong part of their team. Their offense is putrid, but the Denver defense is really good. Outside of that game, though, he's been RB 5, 3, 15, 5, 7, 3 over the last stretch of games. It's going to be cold in Green Bay. Derrick Henry is impossible to tackle in the cold. I expect a huge performance out of Mr. Tractor Cito, Derrick Henry. At number 4, we have Christian McCaffrey, CMC of the 49ers, going up against the Arizona Cardinals in Mexico City on Monday night. Last week, Christian McCaffrey had a quote-unquote down game, where he was the running back number 11 because we saw more touches out of Elijah Mitchell. I do think Elijah Mitchell is here to stay. He's not necessarily going to go away, but he does not sway me off of Christian McCaffrey, especially up against the Cardinals defense that I think McCaffrey could put in work up against. Again, I'm very confident when it comes to Christian McCaffrey. At number 5, to close out tier number 1, we have Jonathan Taylor of the Colts going up against the Philadelphia Eagles at home in Indianapolis. Now, going into last week, I was pretty nervous about Jonathan Taylor. I knew he would be healthy, but I started to have questions because, look, outside of last week and week number 1, this man was running back 46, 23, 59, 23, 33. In week 1, he was RB number 2 up against a putrid Texans defense. So I was worried. But obviously, this guy shit directly on the chest of the Raiders because he was the RB number 1. I know he hasn't necessarily been the safest running back all year long, but maybe the addition of Jeff Saturday making the offensive line play better with Matt Ryan back under center. We have positive things ahead for Jonathan Taylor, so I love him in this spot against the Eagles. We just saw what the Commanders did to that Eagles run defense. Now we move to tier number 2, headlined by Joe Mixon of the Cincinnati Bengals, going up against the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pittsburgh. Last time these two teams faced off was all the way back in week number 1, where Joe Mixon was the RB number 9 on the week. In his last performance, he went up against the Carolina Panthers, and he absolutely skull-fucked the Carolina Panthers, scoring not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 fucking touchdowns in that game. A humongous performance. I highly doubt he's going to score 5 touchdowns in this spot up against the Steelers. The Steelers defense is so much better with TJ Watt not under center as if he's the quarterback, but TJ Watt back for that defense. The carries for Joe Mixon continue to be extremely high. He's a guy that's very safe on a volume standpoint, game in and game out. It's going to be cold in Pittsburgh, projected to be 23 degrees Fahrenheit, which isn't necessarily the best, but it's not projected to be super windy or anything. So I expect a solid performance out of Mixon. At number 7, we have Josh Jacobs of the Los Vegas Raiders going up against the Denver Broncos in Denver. Last time out up against the Broncos, he was the RB number 1 on the week. 28 carries, 144 rushing yards, 6 targets, 5 receptions, 31 receiving yards, and 2 total touchdowns. 32 fantasy points scored in that game. He was on a bit of a cold streak in week 9 and week 8, but last week up against the Colts, he was the RB number 8, currently running back 6 on the season. I know I just kind of sung the praises of the Broncos a little bit ago, but Josh Jacobs, on just a career standpoint, has had the number of the Broncos every single year. This should be a big game out of Jacobs. At number 8, we have my guy, 9-inch Nicholas Chubb of the Cleveland Browns going up against the Buffalo Bills in Buffalo. His ranking could change drastically depending on the weather on Sunday and depending on if they actually play the game on Sunday in Buffalo or not. There's talks right now that the NFL may be looking to move this game to Detroit because, not really because of the conditions of the field, but because it's going to be hard for the Browns to travel to Buffalo with this crazy-ass storm. They're saying there might be 6-7 feet of snow, which would be crazy. If they play in Buffalo in big snow, I'm still fine with Nick Chubb because they're going to have to run the ball a million times. If they play in Detroit, I would be a little bit more comfortable playing Nick Chubb. He was the RB14 last week, but he's currently the running back number 2 on the season in half PPR, despite the fact that he doesn't catch very many passes. He is super reliable game in and game out. And even in games where the Browns don't play the best, like last week up against Miami, he still finished as a top 14 back. At number 9, to close out tier number 2 before we head on into tier number 3, we have Dalvin Cook of the Minnesota Vikings going up against the Dallas Cowboys at 425. Not 1 o'clock for Kirk Cousins. Kind of scary. Kirk Cousins is the king of 1 o'clock games. But with that said, last week up against the Bills, RB number 4, things were kind of rickety at the beginning of the season. Things were going up and down for Dalvin Cook. RB 20, 44, 14, and 27. But ever since week 5, he has taken off. Week 5 against Chicago, RB 7, 13, 8, 15, and 4. The Cowboys defense is no pushover. We did just see Aaron Jones run train on them. Even with the Vikings committing to being more of a pass-heavy offense, Dalvin Cook has still been a key piece here, so we got to have him ranked inside the top 10. Moving now to tier number 3. Speaking of Aaron Jones, running back number 10 going up against the Les Titans tonight in Green Bay. I think this game is going to be incredibly run-heavy from both sides. It appears that Matt LaFleur has figured out that the best way for the Packers to win is to just run the ball aggressively with Aaron Jones. I know A.J. Dillon, Quadzilla, he's there, but ultimately, Aaron Jones is that guy. In his last 4 games, RB2 last week against Dallas. Against Detroit, down game, RB30. But the whole team shit the bed in that matchup. Before that, RB11, RB4, currently RB8 on the season. I like this matchup against the Titans in the cold. Again, very run-heavy. I'm a humongous fan of Aaron Jones. I was a big fan of that celebration when he jumped into the end zone. He did the Marshawn Lynch, hold my dick, where he grabbed his cock as he jumped into the end zone. It was very inspiring. At number 11, we have Alvin Kamara of the New Orleans Saints going up against the Rams at home in New Orleans. 2 down games in a row for Kamara, RB 36 and 23 in the last couple of games. Before that, though, RB 1, 19, 10, and 8. I personally am sick and tired of Jameis Winston. I've talked about this in a bunch of videos in a row, so I'm not going to continue to just push this narrative, but I'm fucking sick of Andy Dalton, but Andy Dalton is better for Alvin Kamara. The Rams defense has been a disaster this season, so I like Alvin Kamara in this spot to punch the LA Rams. Get it? Punch. Very funny. Very funny. Before we move on into running backs 12, 13, and all the way through running backs number 30, I would like to give you guys a quick word for our friends and our sponsor of today's video. They've been on your screen this whole entire time, DraftKings Sportsbook. If you bet $5 on any sport pregame money line, you will get $200 in free bets if your bet wins on DraftKings Sportsbook. Now, since your bet has to win, I don't think you guys should be betting on the NFL since the bet has to win, because we just saw Monday Night Football. Crazy shit happens, right? The Eagles supposed to mollywop the Commanders, doesn't end up happening. But we will look to college football, which is on your screen right now. You navigate to the college football tab. You're going to scroll down a little bit. We're going to go to Ohio State, minus 6,000. Huge favorites up against Maryland and Maryland. $5 on that, win $200 in free bets if your bet wins. If you're a new user, click in the link in the video description down below. Or you could go with scrolling down a little bit more. Florida State versus Louisiana Lafayette, minus 25 400. Bet $5 on that, win $200 in free bets if your bet wins. So make sure you guys check that out. Link in the video description as well as in the pinned comment. So running back number 12 is Ramondre Stevenson of the New England Patriots going up against the New York Jumbo Jets at home in Foxborough. Over his last 4 outings, he's been a top 12 running back in every single game, currently the RB11 on the season. I think this game, just like with the Packers versus the Titans tonight, is going to be a very run-heavy game. While the Jets don't have Breece Hall, I think both of these teams are going to look to jam the ball down each other's throat. Damian Harris is somewhat healthy, but it seems like they've really committed to Stevenson being the guy. I hate that I have him ranked at 12 because I feel like I should have him ranked slightly higher, but 12 feels like a fair ranking to me. His expert consensus rankings on Fantasy Pros right now is RB12. At number 13, we have Dameon Pierce, my guy, of the Houston Texans going up against the Washington Commanders. Over his last 4 outings, he's been a little bit down, RB19, 12, 20, and 20. I was kind of hesitant to rank him in the same range of these other 3 running backs, but ultimately the upside is just so high for Dameon Pierce on a week in, week out standpoint. The guy has been nothing short of incredible when he gets the ball. The issue is that normally the team is behind late in games, so they can't run the ball as much, but maybe that won't be the case this week up against the Commanders. Next up, we move to tier number 4. This tier is pretty big, like Lizzo. We move to number 14, Miles Sanders of the Philadelphia Eagles going up against the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis. A big down game last week out of Miles Sanders and A.J. Brown up against the Commanders, RB number 39. But we have seen this season a couple of times. Week 5, RB 37. Week 3, RB 47. So he's had 3 down games, but outside of that, he's been relatively consistent as a top 16 back. Currently RB 17 on the season. The Colts defense doesn't really scare me. So again, a couple of down games on the season. That's just how the cookie fucking crumbles. So at the end of the day, I'm still good with Miles Sanders. At number 15, we have David Montgomery, who's questionable going into this game, going up against a putrid dog shit Atlanta Falcons defense. David Montgomery has not been the best this season, but with Khalil Herbert now on the IR, it is David Montgomery's time to shine. I know Tristan Ebner is there, but I really don't think it's going to be the same split with Montgomery and Ebner as it would be with Montgomery and Khalil Herbert. I don't necessarily think Montgomery is the most talented player on earth, but the matchup is delightful. And the fire is so delightful. I think that's a part of the Christmas song, but maybe I don't know. But David Montgomery in this spot without Khalil Herbert, chef's kiss, menu, freak. At number 16, we have Tony Pollard of the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Minnesota Vikings in Minnesota. Back-to-back games as a top 7 running back, currently the RB16 on the season. Gets the Vikings defense that just got ran a train on by Devin Singletary last week. The issue with Tony Pollard, I would love to rank him higher. He's so fucking good, but the problem is that stupid bastard, that fat fuck Mike McCarthy and Jerry Jones just love, oh, this offense runs through Zeke. Fuck you. This offense does not run through Zeke. The offense should run on Tony Pollard like America used to run on Duncan. Tony Pollard is explosive. Ezekiel Elliott runs at the speed that turtles. Fuck, I hate it. I hate it so much, but they're going to use Zeke, and that's what puts Tony Pollard down here at RB16. I still think he could have a great game, though, even if Zeke plays. Running back 17, Jamal with 2A's Williams of the Detroit Lions, going up against the New York Football Giants in MetLife. It is important to note that Mr. Jamal Williams is currently questionable going into this game. I do believe that he is going to end up playing, though. Top 20 running back in the last 3 games. DeAndre Swift's usage has been absurdly low. It makes no sense. And Jamal Williams continues to score touchdowns. He scored 3 touchdowns in the last 3 games. The Giants defense isn't the best on paper. Problem is, you never know with Dan Campbell. This week might be the week where he chooses to unleash DeAndre Swift. And based upon where I have DeAndre Swift ranked, I'm going to look like an absolute fucking idiot if that is the case. But I hope it is, because I am a DeAndre Swift fanatic. At number 18, we have Cordero Patterson of the Atlanta Falcons going up against the Chicago Bears. He shit the bed last week up against the Panthers, but I do genuinely believe that it is because the game was rainy on Thursday Night Football. Cordero Patterson was coming off of an injury. I think the team didn't want to just run the ball a bunch of times in the rain with Patterson coming off the injury. They didn't want him to re-aggravate his injury. So this week in a dome up against the Bears, I feel like this is the perfect spot for Cordero Patterson to have a bounce back game. If he doesn't bounce back, then it's time to have a real discussion about Cordero Patterson. But right now, I don't think there's too much to panic about. He's averaging 5.4 yards per attempt. The guy's been really good when healthy this season. Next up, we got James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals going up against the 49ers. James Conner played so well last week that they cut Eno Benjamin, 21 rushes for 69 yards. Very nice. I like 3 receptions, 3 targets, 17 receiving yards, 2 tugs, 22 fantasy points, 5 at the running back on the week. Problem is this week he's getting smacked front hand, backhand like he's in the Key and Peele sketch by Will Smith by the defense. The 49ers defense is incredibly ferocious. They are scary. They're very scary. That's the issue with Conner. But if Conner continues to see this much work and if Kyler plays, I think we could be in a bet for a bounce back campaign out of Conner, because to start the year off, it was brutal. But since coming back off the injury, maybe it is James Conner's redemption arc here, especially next week up against the Chargers. At number 20, we have Donta Foreman. He had an amazing game up against Atlanta. His last amazing game, also up against Atlanta. He was RB5 in week 8 against Atlanta, RB9 last week against Atlanta. Baltimore did play really good up against Alvin Kamara last week. They are going to be going with Baker Mayfield under center. This play does kind of worry me, but there's kind of downside to all of these players that I'm talking about, and that's why they're all in the exact same tier. It seems like Chuba Hubbard has been pushed to the side and Foreman is the guy. And if that is really the case, I'd find it hard for Foreman to fall outside of the top 24 running backs. But again, the Ravens defense does scare me out of him potentially finishing even higher. At number 21, we have Mr. Brian Robinson coming off of a heater game last week against the Eagles. RB13, 26 carries for 86 yards and a tug. This week he faces the second worst rush defense in the NFL. They have Antonio Gibson. They are going to use Antonio Gibson, I can guarantee you. But based upon what we saw last week and based upon this matchup, like Gibson's the pass catching back, Robinson is the in between the tackles, jam the ball down your throat back against the Texans. That's defense sucks donkey cock. I expect a heavy dose of Brian Robinson, but to me, he probably is the most risky running back on this tab. Next up, we move to tier number 5 with running backs 22 through 24. Devin Singletary, again, this heavily hinges upon where this game is being played. If it's played in Buffalo, they're going to have to run the ball a lot. And unlike Chubb, I actually think I would be more comfortable playing Devin Singletary in this spot up against the Browns if it was in Buffalo, because they're going to run the ball a shit ton. If it is not in Buffalo and it's in Detroit, then I don't know how much they rush the ball, because typically the Bills just stay away from running the ball. Even though, you know, when you're up in the game, you should just run. They just throw instead, and then Josh Allen makes these stupid fucking decisions. It's so frustrating. Devin Singletary last season down the stretch was a league winner for fantasy football. I think he could do that again as long as the Bills commit to the run, but they just haven't, so it's hard to rank him much higher than I got him. At 23, we have Isaiah Pacheco of the Chiefs going up against the LA Chargers in LA. Last week, I talked about this a bunch. Clyde Edwards-Helaire played 4 snaps. 4 snaps for the Chiefs. McKinnon was catching passes. Pacheco was getting all the carries. 16 carries, 82 yards, no targets. It is what it is, though. They get the Chargers run defense. This could be an explosive game. This could be the game of Pacheco's rookie year that we look back on. I love the matchup, but obviously Andy Reid loves tickling our balls, giving us this Pacheco, and then on Sunday night, we're going to just see Clyde Edwards-Helaire have like 20 touches, and it's going to make me jump off a fucking roof. At number 24, we have Antonio Gibson of the Commanders going up against the Houston Texans in Houston. Last week, RB number 15, 11 rushes, 44 yards, 3 targets, 3 receptions, 14 receiving yards, and a touchdown. Again, I love the matchup. I do think Brian Robinson is slightly better going into the game. He would be the running back that I prefer, but if you told me you had Gibson ranked above Robinson, I don't think I'm going to have that much of an argument with you. If you have ended up enjoying thus far, we're almost getting to the end of the video. Make sure you hit that like button as well as that subscribe button down below. It helps us out a ton. At number 25, we have DeAndre Swift. It has been brutal since this guy returned. RB 23, 26, and 30. It keeps getting worse. And even though he scored a touchdown in each of the last 3 games, he has 4 touchdowns on the season in 6 games, he has still been a disaster. He looks incredible. He averages 6.3 yards per attempt, but Dan Campbell continues to fuck us over, to bend the Swift fantasy owners over a table and fuck us relentlessly without the use of lube. He's sodomizing us 50 Shades of Grey style. I hope this is the bounce back game, but I can't come on here and reasonably get down on my knees and give Swift the metaphorical gawk gawk dick suck 9,000, because while I think he's a great player, the situation is bleak right now. Number 26, we have Kenyon Drake of the Ravens going up against the Carolina Panthers at home in Baltimore. Back-to-back games as a top 15 running back. His ranking will adjust heavily by what we see prior to kickoff on Sunday. If Edwards is in, and we will see reports of this before the game, is in their like walkthrough before the game, they kind of stand there and it's like, oh, this is the first team. The second team, if we see Kenyon Drake out there with the first team, then I'm moving Drake up the rankings. If we see Gus Edwards with the first team, he's going from unranked into the rankings. So that's kind of how I treat this. Great matchup against the Panthers. Just really depends who the RB1 is going to be. At 27, we have Najee Harris. This guy looked incredible last week up against the Saints. He did get banged up, but should be playing on Sunday. This week gets the Bengals. Last time out against the Bengals, 10 fantasy points. Last week, he had 10 fantasy points, but he looked way better last week than he looked in week number 1. I hope that now we are on track for a Najee Harris redemption story, but with how good Jaylen Warren has looked, I'd be shocked if we do see that redemption. This year at 28, we have Michael Carter of the Jets going up against the Patriots in New England, RB9. Last week up against the Bills, or the last game against the Bills, they were on bye last week. Week 8 up against the Patriots, 7 rushes, 26 rushing yards, 7 targets, 4 receptions, 35 receiving yards, 8 fantasy points, running back 33 on the week. So not a great game against the Patriots last time, but I do think they're going to continue to look to run the rock aggressively. James Robinson is seeing more usage, so that's why I don't have Michael Carter ranked higher. At 29, we have Elijah Mitchell. I talked about this with Christian McCaffrey. The usage of Mitchell isn't going to dip drastically. He had 18 rushes last week. I think he's maybe around 14 this week, so it goes down a little bit. But he's still a piece in this offense, and the Cardinals' defense is fucking dog shit. So there could be a good game out of Mitchell, but I think the usage decreases. RB30, we have Melvin Gordon of the Denver Broncos going up against the Las Vegas Raiders in Viva Las Vegas. Again, the problem with Melvin Gordon is this is now a 3-headed backfield with Edmonds, Murray, and Gordon. We currently saw last week Gordon finish as RB27. He is the best out of that trio, that threesome. The Raiders defense sucks ass. It's a really positive matchup, but all of these factors around, the offense sucks. There's a triple-headed backfield. All of this adds up to me not being able to rank Melvin Gordon any higher. If I had to pick any of them, though, I would start Melvin Gordon. Thank you guys all so much for watching. If you ended up enjoying, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below as well as that like button. It would help me out a ton. If you want to follow me on Twitter, please do so at Notorious FNTSY. I hope you all have a great rest of your guys' day. Make sure you guys check out that DraftKings bet $5. Win $200 in free bets if your bet wins. Check that out. Link in the video description. Love you guys all so much. Have a great rest of your guys' day. And as always, goodbye.
Thank you.